I don't like how she says that. But I also don't know how to change it. So we're just going to leave it.
I don't either.
We're going to leave it as is. We talk about it every episode and we talk about it after the recording starts. So nobody knows what we're actually talking about. So we'll just leave it a secret. We'll just let people guess. Like they'll never actually really know. They'll really actually never know like what we're talking about when we say that. So I like just leaving it like that. Oh, listen to how deep that is. Ooh, very wide deep. Oh yeah. And then not as deep at all. I need to put a little bit more on my bass because I hate, this is going to sound, no one gives a shit about this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I hate post editing treble and bass. I would rather it be clean going into it as opposed to post. So I'm trying to get my especially the lows. I need to get them right because I don't like the artificial lows in post production. They just don't sound as good. It doesn't sound as like meaty.
Yeah.
Now listen how meaty this gets. You ready? This is like late night sex talk radio.
Give it.
Hey, this is Corey Allen with K101. It's pretty deep.
It's like it's definitely a nighttime listener.
Oh, like soft talk.
Like soft, like R&B.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I think about it. So I can turn like the treble. I can turn everything down and just go low. But I also like a lot of treble too because I like it. I like that pop. I like the sharpness.
Yeah.
I like a good balance. It's weird because like I test ranges of like equalizers all the time, just in post and pre. Mm-hmm. And there's certain ones that there's like a certain sound that I've always been trying to achieve pre as opposed to post. Post I've got down, but I really want that clean, nice, clean sound coming in pre. And
yeah,
I'm close. I like it. I like it like this. How does this sound? Sound pretty good?
Yeah.
I feel like it's nice and full.
Yeah. What do you guys think?
Oh yeah. Thanks for the feedback.
Cat got your tongue? Speak up. We can't hear you.
As everybody can see at this point, Chris and I are in our respected spots. We're both on vacation, but we're certainly vacationing in different parts now. Although Chris and I come from the same family, he identifies more with one part of our family that's old money, and I identify with one part of our family that's new money. So Chris is it looks like he's held up in like an old Republican convention or an old Republican meeting spot, where I am on the yacht of which I purchased with all of my TikTok money. So,
ooh,
yeah. Yeah. And here's the thing. It won't last forever. And because I am so terrible financially, because I'm only 17 years old and happen to be a TikTok star, all this money will be lost in the next 3.5 years.
Yeah. So, once you lose your influencer status when you're above the age of 21.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting is I've, thinking about like TikTok stars in general, like, you've got like, what is it? There's like a group of kids that all live in like the same house, but they're all like TikTok stars and they're all super drama filled. It's essentially like the new
like Jersey Shore.
Yeah. It's like this. It's like the same thing, but TikTok stars and like these bunch of like stupid white kids that don't know how to dance with really stupid haircuts.
Yeah.
Like that's the new thing. So now there's aspirations of all these people. It's like, well, I could be a TikTok star. We've talked about it with like YouTube. Oh, I could be a YouTube star. I'd be a TikTok star. I'd do like this. What I always find fascinating about those things, like YouTube's never going to go away, but there is a lot. I mean, there's some validity to the fact that like TikTok won't be relevant in 5 years. You know what I mean? Like social media platforms fluctuate so much. Like Facebook has fluctuated so much. Facebook has followed, it's essentially followed lockstep with the people that originally were on it. Facebook used to be for young kids. Now Facebook is like the old generation platform. It's not college anymore. It's like, how do a bunch of stay-at-home moms stay connected? That's Facebook. Like that's what Facebook has turned into.
I think social media is like the generational gap from people living in cities and then people living in rural communities. Like when Facebook was new, it was the craze, right? It was the hip, it was the trendy. It was where
It was really
all
trendy, yeah.
people that you would typically see in a city go to, right? It's hip, it's fashionable. But then after a while, it dies down. And then Facebook starts to become rural, where it's no longer hip and trendy. It's where like all the old people are that are like generationally 30 years behind modern society.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah,
So,
I agree with that.
so it's like that old woman that lives in a rural town who still wears clothes from the 70s. It's like, oh, isn't this, look how hip I am. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there. Yeah, you're kind of right. There is something you said for that, but it's weird how the platform has continued to be built out to support the generation of which it started with.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think Facebook pretends to be like this young. It's not like a young association. That's why Facebook bought Instagram. Like Facebook's like, well, we don't need to develop it. We can just buy it. And they bought Instagram, and Instagram is for more younger. Like you and I feel like are in, I would say Facebook originals, but still young enough to be relevant in Instagram. You know what I mean? But like Facebook is really for older generations, whereas TikTok, I'm lost with TikTok. Like, I don't know. I'm a TikTok. I don't know what the hell's going on with TikTok at any given time. I don't know how to use the platform.
You hear this fool, fellas? He doesn't know what a TikTok is.
Yeah, I don't mean an old grandfather clock that you have in your fucking house. TikTok.
You hear this fool? Another tick-tard.
Dude, you look like the creepy guy from The Purge. The rich dude from The Purge, the blonde hair that shows up to the house. That's what you look like. I think he's got a machete. I can't really remember, but it's something gruesome.
This fool's Bitcoins are just smaller pennies.
He doesn't believe in cryptocurrency. Dude, there's a lot of NFL players right now trying to sign contracts for the next season to get paid in Bitcoin instead of money, instead of cash.
Well, maybe.
They're like, just give me 65,000 Bitcoin or give me 65,000 crypto. It's like,
yeah,
but which one? And they're not all going to be in the same race to be relevant. Some are going to lose out and some will make money. And I actually believe that the fluctuation on Bitcoin is super disturbing to the marketplace.
Yeah. Hello, fella. Do you hear what this person thinks cryptocurrency is the money you bury with your dead?
All right, let's get into it. We've got things to talk about. Let's give them something to talk about. How about love? All right, we got some news to get into. Let's get into it. All right. So we've talked about PCA. Last episode was all PCA. So there's a bunch of topical stuff that we had in the episode as far as like new releases, PCA stuff. It's very news driven. So this isn't going to be a long segment on this particular show. It's kind of just filling in the gap in what's happened in the recent week. And then just talking about really what some releases have come out here in like literally in the last week, announcements that were made. First one, Aging Room releasing Rare Collection in August. So the owner of Aging Room is doing like a rare collection, a small run that's based on limited tobacco availability. So you'll see that come out in the next few months. So they're doing 3 different Vitolas. One is called the Festive, which is a 4.5 by 52. It's $15 a cigar. This is from Aging Room. Now, Aging Room has some expensive cigars, but that seems like a hefty price point. Sold in boxes of 10 for 150. They also got them in a 5.5 by 55, which is like a Robusto extra. Those are $15.50 each, $155 a box. And then they have the big Honkin' Donger, which is a 6 by 60. Those are sold at $16 a piece. Box of 10 is $160. You know what? I have this like weird opinion on Aging Room. I feel like Aging Room has done this.
Yeah.
Like how good its cigars are. And ironically, even though they won Cigar of the Year 2 years ago, that was one of my least favorite Aging Room cigars. So I sometimes get kind of confused by like what they bring to the marketplace. And like, is it, I don't know. It's like weird. It's like a semi-relevant brand, but like you forget about them until they come out with another release like this. Like it seems like they don't stay relevant. Like they struggle to stay relevant in the industry. So hopefully this ends up being a good cigar. It's actually rolled and manufactured at AJ Fernandez factory. So we pray to God that it's good, but we'll see. It'll be out in brick and mortars near you in the next couple of months. Go ahead.
What was that, Timothy? $15. Too cheap. I agree. Too cheap.
Too cheap. Well, speaking of too cheap, if you don't like that one, you're really not going to like this one. CAO has released a new flathead, the V21, shipping next month. Now, this is kind of like, I would say, other CAO cigars. When we talk about like marketing, we talk about brand before product, marketing before blend. And this just, to me, oozes of that. This has like a leather lined case, which I think is overkill for what I think the CAO flathead represents. And they've really kind of tried to expound upon this brand, expand it beyond like the original flathead 660, the one that won didn't win, but got third place Cigar Aficionado like a few years back. And I think they just wanted to really ride that wave as far as they could. And here's what I'm going to say. The wave crashed in the beach 2 years ago. There's no more wave. You got to give up on the flathead series. It's time to do something else, but they are releasing it. It's going to be out in the next month or so. Mexican San Andreas wrapper over Connecticut broadleaf binder, Dominican Lajero, and Nicaraguan fillers. I'm not saying it's not going to be a good cigar, but this is what I have a problem with. The one Vitola, I have a problem with both of Vitolas. Vitola number one, which is the smallest of the two, is a 6x60. So that's the smallest it comes in, a 6x60. That's a big honkin' donger. $14 a piece, sold in a box of 27. It's almost $400 for a box of these cigars. And I know you're partially paying for the box that it comes in, because when you look at the box, you go, well, why did you make it like that? It's a leather lined fucking box. And then the second release, the second Vitola of it, is called the Big Block V21, which is a 7x70. So obviously these are directed into a specific marketplace, right? And here's what I think. I think a mechanic that works in a garage that likes to smoke cigars, that like literally that's who this is like tailored towards. Someone who's more, this is hopefully not going to be controversial, but I'm thinking more blue collar, right? More working with your hands. That's who this is like tailored to. I don't imagine that a lot of folks that, well, one, I think the Vitolas are obnoxious, but it fits a certain demographic because there's people who like smoking those larger Vitolas. But I think if you're talking about like real enthusiasts and aficionados in the cigar industry, I don't think this particular cigar is applicable to the mass audience, the broad audience. But we'll see what happens, because it is a CAO. You could kind of talk shit about it all you want. Could be a good cigar, but there's no doubt they're one of the biggest brands in the country. They are for a reason. So, but this one just oozes, again, more of like marketing before blend, which drives me nuts.
Clearly, these people have never heard of German or Italian sports cars. Clearly.
Right.
Clearly. Here's the thing. What happens to a baby that you set down that no one picks up? What happens to a baby that you put out but no one picks up? You know what happens to its head? Gets flat. That's truth. CAO has been babying this cigar for so long that it legitimately has gone flat.
Yep.
Think about it. Is that a stretch of an analogy?
A little bit. Yep.
But I give no shits. I give no shits.
Sure is.
Fellas, what do you think of that? Was that a good joke? Great joke, Chris. Thanks, Timothy.
All right, on to the next one. Famous smoke shop back online after a ransomware attack over a week ago. So I've seen this before. Ransomware attacks suck. This one done by the Russians, apparently. Essentially,
cigar shop.
Yeah, at an online cigar. Yeah, online cigar.
Yeah, we got Target.
I buy from Famous too, so I got the notice in an email, and I go, well, I guess I'm not buying from Famous this week. So on July 7th, it was discovered that suspicious activity was going on in the computer realm of their system. And what happened is they were held in ransomware. I think it was like a $45,000 ransom that was being held against some of their systems. So essentially they held their system hostage and said, we're not going to allow you to get back online until you do these things. But Famous has assured everybody who has an account with them that none of their sensitive information, like credit card information, was compromised. The only thing that they really had access to and that they showed that they had access to was like names, addresses, and so on. But no credit card information was compromised. So that's a good thing. It was they were running $45,000 in cryptocurrency to reverse the data strangle, which is kind of hilarious. I assume that they didn't get it because the owner came out, author Zartsky came out and said that he was absolutely not going to comply with what they wanted. The investigation's ongoing. Now, when there's ransomware attacks like this, the FBI gets involved. That's what happens. So from everything that I've researched in this particular account and what's happened is that the Russian hackers now like cease to exist. They can't find them. I assume that they got what they needed back. And there's been, I highly doubt they paid the $45,000. So something happened in that week's time, but they're back up and running. They're back online. Everything's good.
Dimitri, who do you want to go after to make money? We want to retire at the age of 30. What do you want to do? Do you want to go after the American government, this oppressive government, and make millions? No.
Go after this.
We will target small to medium-sized businesses.
That's what they did. I mean, here's the thing: is there's multiple websites. The ransomware organization is called Revil or Revil, Revil.
Okay.
And so there was multiple places that they had attacked in the same day. So it just wasn't Famous. It was like multiple, and it was like $45,000 ransom for each one. Again, they've like all but disappeared at this point, according to the investigation. So I know Famous felt obviously comfortable enough to get everything back up online and running. And with that kind of confidence, obviously comes in with whoever is doing the ongoing investigation, like the FBI says, hey, yeah, you're good. You can go back up and start running your business again and so on. But yeah, I mean, but you think about it, the impact of a week's worth of sales, if you're a large online retailer like Famous, that sucks, dude. That's super impactful. Yeah. I know business who struggled with this last year and who are offline for way more than a week. If you think about it, if let's say you're a multi-million-dollar business, say you're a $50 million business, right? And get the old handy dandy calculator out here. You're a $50 million business and there's however many, 220 business days in the year. But if you're an online retailer, it's actually technically 365, but let's just say 220, right? So you do 50 million divided by 220 is $272,000 a day. So if you are out for a week, that's about $1.5 million that you lose for just not being in business if you're a $50 million company. Now, I'm not suggesting that Famous is $50 million. I suspect that they're not, but you never know. You could probably look that up. But just as like, hey, $50 million isn't a massive business. It's a big business, but it's not a massive business. But do you imagine losing $1.5 million?
Yeah.
In such a short period of time? It's super impactful.
I wish it had been a lot more elaborate of a scheme. Like, we hold their company hostage. Pay us in one cigar. We want this cigar delivered to this airfield.
He's so funny.
Take the C-13 airplane.
Oh, that'd be hilarious.
Across the Atlantic Ocean into Great Mother Russia.
I wonder how the selection process for the ransomware works. Like, what are they targeting in a specific business? Is it how big your business is? Like,
probably does some of that, but probably like security loopholes.
Right.
Like they ping it to look for holes.
Yeah.
And then they attack it. So it's just a matter of finding the vulnerable companies that are generating any type of revenue that's worth going after. And like,
Right.
Plus, like a company like Famous, they gotta be famous.
All right, that's all we got for news. Not much going out. The new Crown Heads. This is just a reminder. The new Crown Heads Los Calaveras is shipping. Should be in stores, I think, in August. I don't know that it's going to hit into this month because we're almost at the end of this month, but I know that they've begun shipping. So those will be out soon. But that's
great news. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So today we're doing something I would say rare and special. The segment itself isn't special, but what's attached to the segment is kind of special. We're doing another overrated, underrated, and we're doing luxury, expensive cigars. Now, instead of doing the spinny wheel of death like we usually do, because we have numerous amounts of brands, what I did is I just solicited feedback from people in the Instagram community just through a simple question. Name some luxury expensive cigars. And so common themes and common trends for specific cigars that had some repeatability were the ones that I attached to the list. So that's how I comprised this list of. Luckily enough, I've smoked every one of these cigars. I don't think Chris has, so I can speak to all of them. Chris, I think you can speak to like 3 of them, 3 of the 5.
Do you hear that, gentlemen? He thinks he's better than me.
I don't think I'm better than you. I just think...
This American thinks he's better than me, Timothy. Laugh at him. Make a mockery of him.
I don't think your old money goes as far as my new money.
He thinks, you don't have the queen on your side, prick.
Queens are dead.
Oh.
Speaking of queens in England and all that, let's begin with this. Perfect segue. Overrated, underrated luxury cigars. Number 1, this was a common choice. This was repeated feedback from the Instagram community. The Davidoff Winston Churchill Late Hour, which is 7 by 48. Now, we've smoked this cigar. We've reviewed this cigar, so we can speak intelligently about the cigar. Both of us. Comes in right just above the $20 price point for 1 stick. It is an Ecuadorian Habana wrapper, Mexican San Andreas binder, and a combination of Dominican and Nicaraguan fillers. So Davidoff Winston Churchill Late Hour, which I've smoked numerous amounts of times and still have a couple. Overrated or underrated in terms of luxury cigars? Chris, what do you think? Now, if we reflect back on this, let me also say this. We scored it a 91 when we reviewed it about a year and a half, 2 years ago.
The great Winston Churchill is one of the greatest men in this entire world, Corey. One of the greatest men. And the thing about the Winston Churchill Late Hour is it represents that moment in time at night. The late hour, 11:59. Keep that in mind. The late hour represents a time of day by which we, the United Kingdom, come together to celebrate manhood. The late hour is a time for prestigious, respectable men to gather in our great halls to partake in the finest of drink and liqueurs, in the finest cigars the world has ever seen. Now, Davidoff Winston Churchill Late Hour is by far the best cigar that us Brits smoke every day. Right, fellas? They all nodded. You can't see them, but they all nodded.
I like how it's essentially an ode to England. Obviously, Winston Churchill Late Hour, but so I don't know if you remember this, but these are actually aged in charred oak barrels, and charred oak barrels, white oak, comes from the U.S. So the irony of this being an ode to Winston Churchill being aged in American barrels is real fucking weird to me. But here's the thing. One of the things that I think you can't argue with is that it is a good cigar.
It's a fantastic cigar.
It's not my favorite Davidoff, but that's like also saying that's also saying like this is the worst of the best. You know what I mean? Like the Colorado Claro is my favorite Davidoff cigar, but like the Grand Cru or even the Nicaragua or the Yamasa, like
the Yamasa is my favorite.
The Millennium. I mean, there's so many fucking good Davidoff cigars. It's like if you say this one's the worst, it's like the worst of like the top tier fucking athletes in the world. It's still in the top like 1%. The cigar is phenomenal, really. It's a very, very, I love the flavors and aromas of the cigar. So in my opinion, when I kind of look at this and I go, okay, this is when you smash it in with the rest of the Davidoff line, it's actually on the lower end from a price range. Because there are some, like you think about like the Davidoff Millenniums, again, the Grand Cru, the Carlotta Eclair, those range from like $23 to $27, $28 a stick. Then you get into the year of stuff, which is like $40 a cigar, $35 to $40 a cigar. And those really are kind of the top echelon, minus some like really crazy special edition stuff. The year of the Ox, the year of the Rooster, all those, the year of the Dog, those range upwards of that $40 cigar. And I don't want to say rightfully so necessarily with each one of those, but if I look at the Winston Churchill late hour, which is more towards the bottom end of that pricing spectrum, just above things like the Yamasa and the Nicaragua, but below certainly the majority of what's in the Davidoff line, I think this is a really good cigar. And for a 7x48, I have no problem paying $20 for it. I really don't, because I think it's that good.
I think what you're saying is this. This is a perfect cigar, not only for us Brits, but it is a cigar that even the Americans like, right?
Right, for sure.
And that says something. Forget the Boston Tea Party and your proclamation of independence. What this is ostensibly done is brought the Americans and the British together under one roof, preferably our roof, to celebrate this exquisite cigar that is totally appropriate for what it is. A great British with a slight American curveball about the barrel thing, which I'm not entirely sure I believe, but it is a fantastic cigar.
They are American white oak barrels, which, I mean, that's what they use for bourbon. All those were used for single malt scotch and not bourbon. Charred white oak barrels, man. That's what they use for. So I thought the irony in that is fucking weird.
Dude, it's totally ironic as
Really
fuck.
The ode to like the greatest prime minister, arguably in British history. The tobacco sits and is aged in an American white oak barrel. I love it.
They get it in barrels?
Any other barrel. Like, you could have picked like any sort of Irish whiskey barrel, any sort of Scotch barrel, literally from any other country surrounding Britain. They're like, gotta get that American one. The best barrels. Yeah, there you go. So the Davidoff Winston Churchill late hour, I think we're both agreeing that it's appropriate.
It is appropriate, man. It really is.
Yeah, I agree. Very good cigar. All right, moving on. Second on our list, and in no particular order, is the Padrón Serie 1926 Numero 9, which is one of the most popular. And why is it the most popular? Is it the best? I don't know. It's the most popular because it made Cigar Aficionado's top list however many years ago, 2000 something. Made Cigar of the Year, right?
Yeah.
This is a very, very, very popular cigar. Any Padrón fan out there has probably smoked more than their fair share of these cigars. It's a 5 1/4 by 56. It's a Nicaraguan Puro. Comes in at just around $18. So when we talk about Padrón, of course, we've talked about this before on the podcast. Padrón 1926 specifically, I've had the number 9. I think it's a fucking phenomenal cigar. Totally worth any sort of great rating that it gets. $18 price point isn't exactly hefty, but it's upper echelon. So in your opinion, around the Padrón 1926 number 9, is it worth the $18? What do you like? What do you dislike about the cigar as a whole?
I just love the balls of Padrón to say, we are going to listen. It was released in 1926 in the midst of the Great Depression, when no one had any fucking money, nothing, to say, hey, we're gonna come out with this cigar that costs $18 in most United states, and we give no fuck how poor you think you are, because we're just going to come out with this exquisite cigar for anybody who can afford it. Yeah, you want to pay bills for the next year? Fuck it. Get a cigar. Get a 1926 Padron.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there was plenty of people that gave up their family lives to smoke this cigar in 1926 amidst just the most economical, huge catastrophic crisis this United States has ever experienced.
I would like to think that there was a lot of middle class dads that abandoned their families just so they could smoke more 1926.
100%. Like food for kids or a 2-hour smoke.
Yep. Food for kids or smoky treat for dad.
Why do you think so many dads left back in the day?
Yeah. They were going to give up their tobacco. That's
no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So the fact that Padron had the balls to release this cigar amidst a Great Depression and still came out on top, that says something about the brand. Because what that says is two things, people. People were willing to spend $18 for a cigar that, in all honesty, was worth giving your family up for.
Yeah. Now the question is, the extended question is back then it was worth giving up your family, but is it worth giving up your family today?
Ooh, great question, Corey. I'm glad you asked that one. Absolutely. Like, listen, there was nothing that I would prefer more than to sell my child to smoke 1926s until the end of my days. That's how good that cigar is. That's how good it is.
So let's think about this. We've put on this podcast, we've declared it before that we put a price on a human, roughly $400,000. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do some math again. I'm going to say 400.
I bet you I can get a lifetime supply of 1926.
You can get over 22. You can get over 22,000 Padron 1926 number 9s for the price of just one child.
Dude, doesn't it sound worth it, people?
Seems worth it. This seems kind of worth it. Now, what does 22,222 cigars look like? A lot. It's a lot of cigars. Fills a room.
Yeah.
It fills this room. My office, that fills, my yacht. It fills my yacht. Fills the deck of my yacht.
Imagine smoking a 1926 Padron every day until the day your lungs give out or you die of natural causes.
Now that's the thing. That's the thing. So if you smoked one a day, I love doing math.
I do too.
Dude. Hold on. That's you would have to smoke 60 a day if you wanted to get through them in a year. So essentially 60 years to get through all 22,000.
How many cigars was it?
22,222.
22,000 divided by 365.
Yeah, I did that 60. It's almost 61.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's 61 years.
61 every day, one a day for 61 years.
You can go 61 years. A Padron 1926.
And you know what? This cigar is good enough to fucking do it.
It's totally worth it.
If someone said you could only smoke a Padron 1926 once, literally, that's all you could smoke if you wanted to keep smoking, one a day for 60 years, 61 years, it's probably one of the only cigars I would agree to do that with.
Yeah, probably.
For sure.
It holds a special place in my heart. I borderline want to say it's slightly underrated for what it is to me in terms of the experience of it, like what it represents to me from a memories perspective and just how good it is. I find it slightly underrated still. I don't know why.
Well, what's weird is like even from an objectable sense, and let's just take experiential stuff out of it. Like it's so good that I could see the price point being up in the 20s. You know what I mean? For this particular one, I could say like, oh, spending $23, $24 on it is not a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, versus like when you're already at the 18, it's like, well, I if I had to and I was somewhere, I'd spend $25 for it.
Yeah.
Because
so
I think it's that good.
Imagine you're 18 years old, legally can buy tobacco. Now it's 21, actually. Never mind. 21. 61. Add 61 years to that, people.
Yeah. It's 82 years old. Your last one.
I'm telling you, that's a good way to go out, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a great way to go out. Fucking great. Hopefully you die on the day of the last one.
Yeah, like
that's
I'm fulfilled.
Like it's like the cigar has sustained your life for 60 plus years.
Yes.
Only reason it's like Joe Paterno being the football coach of Penn State. The only reason he was still living was because he was still the football coach. But as soon as he fucking got fired, he died 6 months later. That's what would happen if you went a day without smoking one of these drones. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I kind of think the same way as like in terms of luxury, right? And this is what this encompasses. This whole conversation encompasses like luxury, kind of expensive cigars, right? So there's already an expectation of what they are and what they represent in the marketplace.
Yeah.
I kind of agree with you. I'm thinking slightly underrated.
Yeah.
I think they're that good where you could potentially get more out of it. I'm glad Padrón, doesn't increase the cost on them, but certainly if they did, I wouldn't be upset as long as it hovered in that lower 20 price range.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
I like it. Moving on. Arturo Fuente Opus X, specifically the double Robusto, comes in a 5 3/4 by 52. Now, here's
people pick the double Robusto.
The double Robusto seems to be like one of the more, I don't want to say it's more popular, but it is in the affordable range. Now, here's what I want to say. This is just a standard Opus X. You have the Lost City, you have other variations. They're way more expensive. Lost City, you're getting into about $30 plus. Yeah. I'm talking straight Arturo Fuente Opus X. That I think there's a strange reality around that cigar. When people hear Opus X, they just hear super expensive. But the reality is it's less expensive than the Padrón Serie 1926 number 9.
Yeah.
The Opus X Double Robusto is about $17 a stick. And you can get in smaller Vitolos, you can get an Opus X for under $15.
Yeah.
So you can buy them. They're less expensive than what I think people realize they are. But with that, the stick is a Dominican Puro, Dominican wrapper, Dominican binder, Dominican filler. So there is this expectation of Opus X. This is like the top echelon of Arturo Fuente's brand. What do you think about the traditional Opus X, not the Lost City, not the other variations, the traditional Opus X? What do you think about the cigar? I've had a few recently, which is higher interval of smoking an Opus than I usually do. Usually it's like one a year, but I've had 3 in probably like the past 3 months, weirdly enough, which I don't really do that often.
Yeah.
So it's fresh in my head. But Chris, for you smoked one not that long ago. What did you think about the cigar overall?
I've had.
So I can't text anybody.
Oh, whoa.
This happens.
Okay. Well, continue to play.
Nothing happens.
And I'll figure it out. Okay. Here's the thing. So, Kale, please play. I've had 3 or 4 variations of Opus X's. Only one of them actually wowed me. Especially when I consider the price point.
Right.
I was surprised to see the relatively lower Opus X on the list. And I don't recall if I've had that specific Vitola, but I'm pretty sure I've had that Opus X.
Yeah.
And I will say this. That particular one, I'm not very fond of. Here's the thing. Like, Fuente can make a good cigar. I've had one. But I've also found that when it comes to like the bell curve of price points for Fuentes, the only time a Fuente starts to taste good, in my opinion, is when it breaches the $20 mark. And that's a steep entry, right? That's not the most appetizing way of getting to a good Fuente, in my opinion, from a cost perspective.
Right.
So I would say when it comes to this particular cigar, cigars at that price point of $17-ish, 15 some in some instances, there's plenty of good cigars out there that easily trump that type of Opus X.
Yeah.
So I would say it's a bit overrated for that particular Opus X. With an asterisk to say, if you're willing to spend even more for a Fuente, there's definitely some good ones in the $20+ range,
right,
that are worth trying. If you got a wild hair up your ass, maybe you got a bonus for this Christmas at your work. You know, maybe you fell into some money from some lost rich uncle that you didn't know of that says, I'm giving Chris Allen my estate and $1 million. And you're like,
yeah.
Am I the only Chris Allen in this? Is he really giving that to me? Like, if you just fall into money and you were willing to take that gamble, spend that extra dollar on an Opus X, some of the higher level ones, I should say. Because then I think you might be more inclined to say, oh, that was a great smoke for $40.
Yeah, it's I kind of agree with you. So here's my problem. And it's not really even a problem because I like the cigar. I think Opus X is good, but I agree with you in the sense that it's like, if I have to spend $17 to get in the best of what Arturo Fuente has, what are we doing? Now, I think Don Carlos is decent. I don't think it's great. And that's really at that like $11, $12 price point. I kind of like the Don Carlos, although I think sometimes the flavors seem muted and a bit flat. To me, Opus X is a better cigar. But to get a good cigar to start at that $17 price range, it's like, and then what I think in my head is I go, okay, what else is on the market that I think in terms of like flavor comparability, which it's kind of tough. Like because there is a lot of uniqueness, I think, to the Opus X as a whole, like in terms of its deliciousness. But there's certainly other cigars that I like more that are less expensive. And I think a lot of people would argue that same point right along with me. So I kind of look at it and go, okay, is it worth a $17 price point? Here's what I think. I think relative to the fact that it's considered a luxury cigar, I think it's appropriate because I think it's a good cigar. What I struggle with more is like the Lost City that's double the price point. Because you're doubling the price point, do I get double the enjoyment? No. Again, we talked about this before, diminishing returns. There's only so much that you can get out of it, right? In comparison to like what the marketplace can bear. And in terms of like, okay, what kind of flavors, what kind of experience do you get and what price point you're paying? Those two things together equal value. So where's the value at? There's diminishing returns in everything, wine industry, alcohol industry as a whole, literally in every sense of like every industry, there's diminishing returns on what you get. And I think some of the Opus line is far into those reaches, but I think just a standard Opus X is kind of right in line where it needs to be. And if I were thinking of like the total Opus X line as a whole, and I'm also thinking in comparison to like the Don Carlos would be like a step below it. And of course you have what I consider the Fuente garbage that sits below that. I think it's pretty good. I think it's appropriate because I like smoking them. I actually really enjoy them. I think they're delicious cigars. But you know me, I favor not as much as I used to, but when I get the chance to smoke something that is just very traditionally Dominican, I just fall in love with it all over again. So that's kind of what the Opus X is to me.
Interesting. So agree to disagree.
I think it's appropriate and you think it's overrated.
Yes.
Okay, that's fair. I think that's fair. And I think a lot of people would argue both those points.
Probably.
I don't think a lot of people are going to say it's super underrated, but I think people would say, yeah, it's appropriate. And I think a lot of people would say it's overrated for sure.
Yeah. People that would say it's underrated are the ones that are like, I had to spend $15,000 on a hotel room this weekend, and they didn't even give us free complimentary towels.
Yeah. Ugh. Yeah. Fuck those people. And we're about to get into those cigars. Fourth on our list, kind of a controversial one, popped up a lot when I asked this question, and I suspected it would. And that is the Bayern Reserva 5 Enos Grand Puemos. This comes in at a 6x56, so it is quite a large donger. It is $33 per stick. Now, I have on my notes that it has wrapper, binder, filler as Dominican Puro, and that's only because I copy and pasted it from the Fuente. It's actually undisclosed. Now, so Byron is under the United Cigar brand, and Byron has always been known, and this essentially what Byron has tried to create or emulate to a very precise degree is creating the traditional Cuban style cigar, but like with more attention to detail in terms of production, which everybody knows Cuban production lacks that in terms of quality. But with like all the beautiful bright flavor. So bringing the best of both worlds together. And I've had a couple Byrons. I think I've had 4. And I've had this one. This is the first one I ever smoked, given to me by Mo from Patina.
Yeah.
Dude, legitimately mind-blowing flavors. Like, no doubt. So I know I can speak intelligently to this. And actually I have one downstairs. And here's what I'll say. I always have a hard time spending $30+ for a cigar. I've done it a handful of times. I've done it mostly with Davidoffs. Yeah. And those are all the Europe cigars. And in certain special occasions, I bought them over when I was in Europe and bought them when I was in Puerto Rico. Never bought one in the United States. So when I think about a cigar that's $33, and although it's made again with this kind of Cuban style precision, but with a heightened awareness around the quality of production, I still go, yeah, but it's still $33. A box of these is like $800. Fucking expensive because there's a lot that come in a box. They're fucking expensive. It's like, holy shit. But from my experience in the Byrons that I've smoked, they are literally some of the best cigars I've ever had. So when you get to say something is one of the best cigars you've ever had, and you can't really say that about other cigars, like you can't say it with the same degree of confidence. You look at $33 and you go, okay, did I hit something that is appropriate here? And that's in my mind. I keep going back and forth and going like, what would be reasonable to pay for a Byron cigar? In my head, I'm going, well, I've paid this money for it before and smoked it and really enjoyed it, but is it worth it? In my head, I go, I would pay $25 for this cigar all day long. And then my head goes back. It's like I'm doing this tennis match in my head. Then my head goes, well, for $5 more, you can just buy it. It's only $5. You're already at $25 for an extra $5+ or for an extra $8. Just spend it. What's the difference? It's almost saying like something's $1,000 and you got to pay $1,000. It's $1,008. Like you're already paying $1,000. So who gives a shit? H is a small percentage of it. So it's like, God, is it worth it for 33? I don't know. I'm like, I fucking struggle. And here's the thing. I don't struggle with it being underrated. I struggle with it being appropriate or overrated. Those are my only two struggles. It's kind of one of those cigars that if you're with a group of people that know cigars and you're the only one at the table with a Byron, you're the one with the big swinging dick. That's how this is, but not in a pretentious way. It's not like going to the lounge with your Rolex watch, smoking your Davidoff late hour. It's going to the lounge, pulling this out because you know so much about premium tobacco that you have the Byron, and without saying anything, everyone's going to go, he's fucking smoking a Byron. But it's not a pretentious thing. That's the weird thing about this cigar. It's not a pretentious thing. Like this isn't the Rolex watch wearing yacht club cigar. This is like, I'm a true fucking cigar smoker. And even though I don't have yacht style money, I know how good this cigar is and I'm willing to pay $33 for it. You know, I'm willing to put it on layaway for 6 months.
You're so lucky. I literally would spend all of my insurance settlement to fucking get my hands on a Byron and smoke it. But you know what the fortunate problem with that, Corey, is? I have no fucking arms. I have no arms, Corey.
Yeah, smoke between your toes.
I can't even hold a cigar.
I never thought about that. Dude, what if someone was like a real serious cigar smoker and they didn't have arms?
I have no arms.
How do you do that? Just with your foot. It's like those people that feed them they put the fork between their toes.
Yeah. Hey, fellas, you'll hold the cigar in my mouth, though. Won't you put that dong in my mouth for me? Oh, yeah. Thanks, guys.
So since I know you can't really, I would say, talk about the Byron too much.
Yeah, I got no arms, man.
I am gonna come out and say that I think it's slightly overrated. I think it's the only reason I say it's slightly overrated because I think they're fucking wonderful cigars. I just think they're really outside that appropriate price range. I really would love to see it in like a $25 because then you're butting up against like the meat of the Davidoff brand.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got some real fucking competition because Davidoff's one of my favorite brands in terms of flavors. Dude, those two together, like button head to head and like that similar price. Oh, that's a grudge match to be had.
Byron definitely sounds like a lord's name, though, right?
Lord Byron.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
It's a very powerful name, Byron.
Byron. Yeah, I agree. Isn't it nope, that's Red Baron. I was thinking of those pizzas.
Red Baron. Red Baron. The most prestigious of pizzas.
Not the same. I'm going to go slightly overrated, and it's even tough for me to do that, but let's recognize the fucking thing's expensive, $33.
Let's take my uneducated guess to say underrated because I've never had it.
That works too. You should definitely get your hands on one. They're fantastic. The last one on the list surprisingly popped up from a numerous amounts of people. And the weird thing is not a lot of people have had this cigar or these series of cigars because they're not, I would say, very readily available in the US. I was lucky enough to smoke pretty much everything in their lineup, at least what existed in their lineup a few years ago, because they sent me a box sample. Now here's the thing. They've all been smoked, but I didn't realize how expensive they were when I smoked them. Dude, it's fucking insane. Now, I will preface this. Every Vitola is like at least a 60 ring gauge. They don't make anything smaller than that. Like, I think it's like 60 upwards of like 70. Specifically, the El Septimo, which this is the brand El Septimo, the Colossal Amethyst. Colosso, think about the name. It's a big. It's a 6x60. Here's the crazy thing about the cigar, and I encourage people to look these up because they are very beautiful, aesthetically beautiful. Now, the design and the brand itself, like the band of the cigars, doesn't scream luxury to me. Like when I think about luxury, I think Davidoff. Davidoff has probably the most luxurious branding that I've seen. That's what I think about luxury branding. That's not El Septimo. Like they aren't. It's not, to me, it's not, but they are considered luxury cigars. The owner who is actually bought out the company a few years ago, he owns a holding company with other businesses. He bought out this cigar brand and considers it a luxury brand. Like everything he talks about is how this is a luxury brand. And I think the luxury part comes in when you recognize how expensive they are. So I think about a 6x60. There's a lot of 6x60s on the market. It's a pretty popular Vitola. I think about that Vitola and I go, how much is an average 6x60 cigar? Probably ranges anywhere from what, 9 to 12.
10.
Not, yeah. Okay. So fair. I'm going to say 9 to 12, depending on the actual brand.
That's true.
Right? The manufacturer. The Colossal Amethyst at a 6x60 comes in at a staggering $66 a stick.
What?
$66 for one. And I smoked this cigar, Chris. I had no idea how expensive it was. I never even looked it up.
Expensive?
That's what I'm going to get into. I had everything in their lineup, and I will put this way. The Colossal Amethyst was one of my least favorite. The Black Bullet, I think, was my favorite, and it was like the smallest Vitola. I think that was my favorite. It's a short, chubby donger. I think it's like a 4x60 or like a 3.5x60. It's relatively small. So I smoked this cigar, remember having it. I actually reviewed it and never published the review. And now I remember why. Chris, I'm not kidding when I say this. It was damn near unsmokable. I'm trying to figure out who this cigar was made for, or was I just having a fucking off day? I don't know. $66 a cigar. They tout like the premium aspects of this cigar, the luxurious aspects of this cigar, and the aged tobacco and the profound flavors and all these characteristics of this particular cigar and what it represents and the whole thing, as most people do. But they really go in deep to like characteristics and description of this cigar. And I go, $66 for a brand that's not well represented in the US. Now I'll get to a tidbit of information beyond that in a few minutes. But $66 for a cigar that I remember smoking and reviewing and not publishing the review because I was so confused by what I was smoking. I thought it was not objectively not a good cigar. I think part of it for me is the Vitola, right? We always talk about 6x60, and I always argue that if you're really going to make a fucking well-blended, amazing cigar, it's likely not going to happen in a 6x60 or bigger. It's probably going to be Robusto or lower. I would say arguably the best flavored cigars that I've ever had, the ones that are most balanced and the most complex, are typically more in a Corona style, right? Like even if it's in a 5 or a 5.5 by like 46 or 48. I think it's like a perfect balance in a Vitola and a balance in what you get from wrapper filler combinations. 6x60, I'm a little bit challenged by because it's an overwhelming amount of filler versus what you get in the wrapper and in the binder. And I think maybe that's what I got with this cigar. And I think also too, one of the things that I recognize in this, and I think they're Costa Rican made, but I don't know if it's all Costa Rican tobacco. There's some conflicting information online. So I'm not 100% in terms of what tobacco they're using. All I know is from flavor characteristics to complexity, or in this case, lack thereof, I thought it was an actually objectively bad cigar. Now that I think about an objectively bad cigar, price point not in consideration, and then I take price point into consideration at $66, I go, well, there's no other way to say this, but this is absolutely and egregiously overrated. There's no other way to state it. It's over. I mean, I wouldn't pay $10 for this cigar.
That's like going to a very elitist party where they're serving caviar, the finest of caviar, and you're eating it on a cracker. They hand you caviar, and you take a cracker, and you're like, yes, I see why people think it's good. Because it's expensive. Yes, I like the flavor. And then the waiter that served you the caviar quickly turns and walks away with their tray of hors d'oeuvres and caviar. And you immediately spit it onto the ground, out of your mouth or into your hand or into a napkin going, that was fucking terrible.
Yep.
It's like you may fantasize about the idea that when you realize that you're partaking in something that is considered luxurious, only to find yourself extremely underwhelmed by it, makes you hate it that much more.
Yeah, for sure. And that's kind of how I feel about this brand. And yeah, it's like just the way that the owner touts, and I think every owner has to be proud of what they bring to the table, right? But I think there's just something off about this cigar, and I think there's a lack of reality around its placement in the market. This is predominantly sold in other countries. Again, not a cigar popular in the US. And what I was going to say earlier, and I said I'm going to talk about it, is they actually hired a guy for US distribution specifically to help build the brand in the US. And I think he's the new director of sales. He's been in the tobacco industry for quite some time. So now they're really trying to kickstart and energize the US market with their particular brand. Knowing what I know, and I don't know if other people's opinions align with mine who have had these cigars, because I know some people have had these cigars that I know, it's like I kind of want to know what they think about the brand. It's like I personally think it's going to flop in the US, and for a couple very specific reasons. Most cigar smokers who are like people who are embedded in the cigar industry don't care about luxury. They care about good product. I think the luxury aspects of what cigars represent are more applicable in Europe. I think they're less applicable in the United States. And second to that, there's so many good US brands and US manufacturers that I think a company like this just gets caught up and consumed by so much other great product that has long-standing reputations in the US, has great representation in the marketplace as a whole, and distribution in B&Ms and both online e-tailers as well, that I think it's like late to the market and you're going to be way overpriced. I just don't know that many. If you're hinging yourself to the idea of being a super popular, expensive luxury brand, you've created a niche for yourself, and you may do well in that niche. You may do well, but you're up against you're the incumbent. Like, you're up against a lot of well-known brands. You're up against the Davidoffs and the Padrons, and you think about Fuente and the OpusX line. There's other brands, even Ashton's, right? There's other brands and manufacturers that exist that have been in that more of the luxury echelon of tobacco, premium tobacco, for a lot longer than this organization. So you're kind of coming in and you want to penetrate that US market, and you're trying to convince people like you're going to spend, and some of their cigars are like $30, but still, like, think about it. $30 is probably your like least expensive cigar. This one's $66. Who are you convincing? Like, who are you marketing to? Is it to grow sales exponentially across the board and to attack each region in a certain way to have your cigars represented in B&Ms? Or is it to focus on this very specific luxury lifestyle clientele or consumer? I don't know what their process is, and I don't know what their sales strategy is. I'd have to imagine if you're trying the first one, you're going to fail. If you try the second one, you still have a fucking fight on your hands.
Let's look at the statistics here. You're probably trying to market this to the 1%, right?
For sure. I think so.
Okay. And the product you have, in terms of quality, represents 1%, if not less, of the good tobacco and cigars you can buy on the market, which is not a great place. Like, It's not an overwhelming, like, this is a good cigar, and we're still going to attract, like, you're like in the 1 percentile, right?
Right.
And you're trying to cater to a 1% audience based on income. Yeah. It's like your conversion rate to selling this in a way that is going to be profitable is so narrow and relatively impossible.
Yeah, and you know what I think else about it too is like they don't have an entry cigar. Like, they've got cigars that are $30, but even those cigars, they're just shorter fucking patolas. They're just like this big. They're not even, I mean, this one is huge. This is 6x60 and it's $66, but even like the what was the Black Bullet, the one that I actually thought was pretty decent, which is still a 60. By the way, burnt like shit. Both of them did. Burnt awful. God, I could not say. They look amazing, but it just burnt like garbage. You know, and even that one's expensive. And they have other areas and segmented parts of the brand where they've come out with new cigars that are less expensive, like in the $20 range. But these were like the first ones. I think you're really going to have a hard time convincing people, especially at some of these price ranges. Because I think, and like, here's where my head goes. Do I buy one Colossal Amethyst, or do I buy 3 Davidoff Winston Churchills?
Can you imagine a world with 3 Winston Churchills?
Like, I'm thinking I'm buying 3 late hours. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not buying this thing that I don't know. If you're a consumer that's never had this cigar before and you see $66 on the shelf, the only time you're buying it is if you're drunk and you're just like, fuck it. Or you just have so much expendable income. That's the only way. But if you're at all conscious about what you're smoking and what you're investing your money into to get the best derived experience, you're probably going to overlook this one on the shelves. As a matter of fact, you're probably going to laugh when you see it. You're going to go, what? Who the fuck are these guys? You know what I mean? I think they have, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think they have a huge uphill battle. I think as a brand and try to penetrate the US marketplace, which is real sensitive to like tobacco. I mean, think about the people in the US that we know that smoke, that are really into fucking cigars. Like they're going to run the fucking gauntlet trying to get these into B&Ms. I really, truly, and think about convincing an owner of a B&M who has their shelf stocked with CAOs, with Ashtons, with Fuentes, with Aging Room, with Crown Heads, with CAO, with all these ones that fly off the shelves. Oliva, fly off the shelves. Repeatable. Tatuai, hey, my father, flying off the shelves. And here comes, hey, let me tell you about this cigar. And they're going to give you a sample to smoke, and you're probably going to have the same reaction I did. And you're going to go, oh, like, really? And then they come in and they say, each one of those cigars retails for $66. So now if let's just say hypothetically, they're in a box of 20, you're convincing a brick and mortar shop to spend $1,300 on one box of 20.
Which is going to sit on a premium shelf for quite a while. And
you have to move something off that shelf space to add this cigar in that nobody knows, that's $66 a piece. I'm just thinking logically about this, and I'm going, there's no fucking way. There's no way. And maybe that's not the strategy. Maybe the strategy is to not put it on shelves. Maybe the strategy is sell consumers directly. Maybe the strategy is to do consumer marketing into that luxury lifestyle. Maybe that's what it is.
Or not produce a lot.
Maybe that too.
Just keep production costs low.
Kind of like a fucking Ferrari. You know what I mean?
So it's a supply and demand thing.
It's possible. I mean, I don't know what the strategy is, but I'm thinking logically. I'm trying to be rational about it. And I just don't see a scenario of which it's going to be an explosive brand in the US market. I'll put it that way. You're not going to displace, in my opinion, knowing what I know, you're not going to displace the best of the best, especially in the luxury brands. You're not going to displace a Davidoff, not a higher end Fuente, not a Padron, even Drew Estate, which I don't want to say is luxury. But if you think about like the legal lineup, which is insanely popular and upper echelon in terms of price and or quality, you're not going to displace those. Like you're just in such an uphill battle with what you're bringing to the table in a relatively unknown brand. And when people smoke it, if they have the same considerations for the complexity or again, lack thereof of that particular cigar and some of the others, you're going to go, $66 for this? What the fuck? Like, hell no, I'm not smoking that. So I don't know. You know, I know we're talking about the Colossal Amethyst as a whole, but you know, without even saying anything about the cigar coming in at $66, every single person would go absolutely overrated. There's no cigar I've ever had that's worth $66. Dude, that's 3 fucking quarters of 100. Or that's 2/3 of 100.
Not even a Siglo 3.
That's crazy. No, fuck no. I wouldn't pay that much for a Cuban. Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
But I'm also cheap ass and frugal. All right, that's it. Those are the 5 that we have. I can't wait to do another 5. I got actually a pretty decent list. There's going to be some repeating brands in here, right? Because there's only so many luxury brands. Like there's going to be more Davidoffs, Padrons, Fuente specifically, and like the OpusX, probably another Byron, maybe another El Septimo. But there's other ones too. Like I saw Dumbarton Tobacco and Trust with some of the Stolen Valor stuff. Like they have some really, really expensive cigars. There's some of that stuff in there as well that's like more expensive. So there's a lot that has been added to the list. This is just 5 that I picked out that had some repeatability from folks, soliciting.
And that we've actually smoked to give you a relatively
I was just actually lucky enough when people were posting, I'm like, oh, I've had them. Like I've had these cigars before, which is great because, obviously you want to be intelligent about what you speak about, in particular cigar, but even understanding the brand as well. So there you have it. That's it. That's it for overrated, underrated, luxury, expensive cigars that I always keep putting in quotes. Let's wrap this shit up. Visit our show sponsor, www.mycigarpack.com. The pack this month is riddled with OV cigars, including the factory direct OV, which is a light shade Connecticut wrapper over some mucho delicious Honduran fillers. And I think it's a Honduran binder. I think it's Honduran filler and Honduran binder.
Interesting.
Probably take a look at that.
Sounds tasty.
But pretty damn good factory direct this month. Also, My Cigar Pack has released the El Mysterious Tiger, which if you go to our Instagram, you'll see it's in a big, bright yellow, flashy box with a cool ass like double-headed tiger logo. Fantastic cigar. We have a link in our bio on our Instagram to where you can actually purchase them, but you can go to you can go to cigaryard.com. You can buy a box of them. I don't know if you can buy them in singles, but a box is 10 and I think you can buy them in 5 packs. So I think it's $100 a box. And it's $50 obviously for a 5-pack. So just cut that in half. But those have released. They're out there. You can check them out at cigaryard.com. And again, visit mycigarpack.com, promo code HOT10 at checkout for $10 off your first pack.
And if you're not aware, people, the bite pressure pounds per inch of a tiger, probably even an El Mysterio tiger, is over 1,000 pounds of pressure per inch. I want you to keep that in mind.
Chris, do you remember what a lion is?
600.
500. Do you remember what a Cane Corso is?
730.
That is correct. Yeah. So essentially what we're saying is my dog could kill a lion.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy.
And the bite
just snapped my arm.
And the bite pressure of a human is 160.
Bite pressure of humans 160. That is correct. Yeah, we know the bite pressures of
and if you have dentures,
large animals.
If you have dentures, it's way less.
7 pounds of pressure. You have enough to puncture a strawberry. Yeah. That's about it. I don't have to tell you to visit hotticketweekly.com because right now what you're going to get is essentially an under construction style page. You can visit it, but you won't see anything. Chris and I are, as we've already talked about on the last podcast, we kind of put the original website to bed. We've put it in its grave. We are reworking, revamping the website for different intentions. It will be functional and there will be some cool stuff on it, but it's not going to be riddled with a lot of the review content and like individual podcast content that we had up there before. So all that stuff's going away. It'll be reconditioned and repurposed for other things. But we're going to continue obviously putting a ton of effort into the podcast and the content on here. As well as a new segment of which we are currently outlining and designing, which will be kind of a second podcast sprinkled in throughout the week. It'll be more short form content in terms of podcasts. So it won't be an hour-long episode. It's probably going to span no more than probably 20 minutes. But it's really just going to go in depth. Oh, I'd say slightly in depth, but in a kind of quick fashion. Multiple things that Chris and I had smoked throughout the week. We're going to pick a couple cigars. We're going to discuss them more in a casual manner and less of a formal professional manner of which we did before, which we both hated, which we didn't like, which we hated writing. So we want to keep this thing casual because I think that's what people attach themselves to, is that we just like to have candid conversations about what we're smoking and not get too granular to it, but be informational at the same time. So if you visit hotticketweekly.com, you just type it in, you're going to see it's in a graveyard right now, but it will be out of the grave soon in what I would consider a reformed zombie-like being.
Yeah, pretty much all the existing pages. You'll still have access to all the reviews and stuff that we currently have on the site. They're still in search results.
Yeah, you can search them, but if you go to hotticketweekly.com, you will see.
But they will eventually go down.
Yeah.
They will eventually cease to exist. When you don't feed a baby, baby die.
That's true.
And we're not feeding baby anymore.
We're not feeding baby. That's true. No more Gerber for you, baby. All right, let's wrap this up. I'm going to go eat some Thai food. Thank you guys for listening. This concludes episode 205. We'll be back at you next week with episode 206. See you, everyone.
Say bye, boys.